I always thought that silence in a marriage was just part of the deal. You settle in. You stop trying so hard. Nina and I had been together for nearly 10 years, and somewhere between the dinner plans and the unspoken sighs before bed, we stopped reaching for each other. We weren't unhappy, exactly. We just floated next to one another, in parallel, never touching. That Friday, Jesse showed up. My nephew by marriage, Nina's sister's son. He texted out of the blue, asking if he could crash for a couple of nights while he was in town. Of course, I said yes. I hadn't seen him in years. Last time he was barely a teenager, awkward and quiet. I wasn't expecting the version that showed up at my door. Taller now, toned, his voice deeper, his hair longer. He had this quiet confidence that made it hard to look away from him. Uncle Aaron, he grinned when I opened the door. Wow, you haven't changed much. I laughed, letting him in. That makes one of us. He dropped his duffel bag by the hallway and gave me a quick hug. His scent lingered. Clean laundry, something warm like cedar. I didn't think much of it. Not then. Nina was out of town that weekend, visiting her mother in Vermont. The house was unusually quiet without her, which made Jesse's presence feel louder. We stayed up talking in the living room. Something about how cities feel different when you're older. At some point, I looked at the clock. It was well past midnight. I didn't think about sleeping arrangements, I said, standing and stretching. Jesse shrugged. Couch is fine. I hesitated. Actually, the guest room's being painted. The smell's pretty bad. My bed's big. You can take one side. He looked at me for a second too long, then nodded. Sure, I don't mind. The room was dim when we climbed into bed. I stayed on my side, back to him. I felt tense in my own skin, unsure why. Maybe it was just strange having someone else in bed with me again. Nina and I hadn't shared the same bed in weeks. Her insomnia and my late hours meant we passed each other like ships. Hey! Jesse's voice cut through the dark. You good? I turned slightly. Yeah, just tired. You seem, I don't know, quiet. I almost smiled. You used to be the quiet one. He chuckled softly. Yeah, well, life does that to you. There was a long pause. The kind that feels like something else wants to be said. Is everything okay with you and Aunt Nina? He asked. His question caught me off guard. I didn't answer right away. We're fine, I said eventually. Just different now. I get that, he replied. Love doesn't always look like love after a while. His words stuck to the air like fog. I didn't know what to say to that. We lay there in silence. But it wasn't comfortable. It was thick. I could hear his breathing, slow and even. I tried not to notice how close he was. Tried not to think about the way his leg had accidentally brushed mine beneath the blanket. Tried not to register the heat coming off his body. But I did. I noticed all of it. Maybe it was loneliness. Maybe it was the dark. Maybe it was just the idea of being noticed again. But for the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't feel invisible. He shifted slightly, and I felt the mattress dip. His voice was soft again. Thanks for letting me stay. Of course, I replied, almost a whisper. Anytime. Another long pause. I used to have a crush on you, you know, he said suddenly, almost too quietly. My heart stumbled in my chest. I turned my head toward him, but it was too dark to see his face. I was like 16, he added quickly. Don't freak out. I'm not, I said, but my voice cracked a little. He laughed gently. God, you're blushing. I'm not. You are. I wanted to say something else, something adult, responsible, something that would shift the air back to where it belonged. But I didn't. I just turned my back again and stared at the ceiling in the dark, heart pounding like it hadn't in years. I didn't sleep much that night. The next morning was quiet. Jesse was still asleep when I got up. I stood in the doorway for a moment, watching him. He looked peaceful, curled on his side, one arm beneath the pillow, lips slightly parted. I looked away before I could let the thought finish forming. I spent most of the day pretending the night before hadn't happened. I busied myself with meaningless tasks, answering work emails, cleaning a kitchen that didn't need cleaning. Jesse stayed out most of the day, Said he had plans to meet up with some friends in the city. I was relieved. And then I wasn't. By the time he returned, the sun had already dipped behind the rooftops. He came in, kicked his shoes off, tossed his jacket on the couch. "Long day?" I asked. He nodded. "Too many people. Too much noise." I offered him a beer, and we sat in the living room again. Only this time we didn't talk as much. The air between us wasn't tense exactly, but it wasn't easy either. He didn't bring up what he'd said the night before, and neither did I. But it hovered there, quiet and charged. Eventually I stood. "You heading out tomorrow?" "Probably," he said. "But I'll crash here tonight, if that's okay." "Yeah, of course." Back in the bedroom. It was darker than the night before. I'd turned off the overhead light, just left a small lamp by the bed. The warmth of it made the shadows softer. Jesse walked in barefoot, wearing a t-shirt and thin pajama pants. I turned away when he pulled back the covers and slid in beside me. We lay in silence again. This time, the distance between us was smaller. "I used to think you were the only adult who actually listened to me," Jesse said quietly. "When I was a kid." I turned slightly to face him, though I could barely see his outline. "You were easy to talk to." "I wasn't," he said. "Not with most people." I didn't say anything. "I used to imagine what it would be like to be around you all the time. Not even in a creepy way. Just you made things feel safe." I swallowed. My throat felt tight. "I'm glad I could be that for you." He exhaled a long, soft breath. "It's weird how nothing ever really goes away, you know? Feelings. Even the ones you think you buried." I wasn't sure if he was talking about himself or me. "You ever think about just leaving it all behind?" he asked. "Sometimes," I admitted, "but life doesn't really work like that." "Doesn't mean you don't want to." The silence stretched again. I felt the edge of his foot brush against mine under the blanket. He didn't pull away, and neither did I. "I keep waiting for you to stop me," he whispered. I didn't answer. He moved a little closer. I felt the shift in the mattress, the warmth of his breath on my skin. His hand found my chest, light as a thought, fingers resting just over my heartbeat. "Is this okay?" he asked. I closed my eyes. "I don't know." We didn't move for a long time. His touch wasn't demanding. It was quiet, reverent, like he understood the line he was standing on. I brought my hand to his, laced our fingers together. Not in lust. At least not only that. There was something aching in the space between us. A need that wasn't about bodies. It was about being seen. Held. Needed. He shifted again, forehead resting gently against my shoulder. My other hand moved on its own, brushing his hair back from his face. I could feel him breathing, slow and deep, each inhale syncing with mine. "I missed this," he whispered. "You've never had this," I said back, though my voice was barely audible. "But I imagined it," he said. I wanted to tell him to stop, to turn over, to go back to sleep and forget all of this. But I couldn't, because part of me didn't want him to. I leaned in without realizing it. My lips found his forehead, just a soft press, but it lingered. He didn't move. Neither did I. The kiss wasn't romantic. Not exactly. But it wasn't innocent either. It was a moment everything changed. I didn't sleep again that night, but I didn't turn away from him either. The morning light was soft when I opened my eyes. Jesse was still asleep, his hand resting against my ribs, fingers curled gently like he hadn't wanted to let go. I stayed still, watching the ceiling, heart slow and heavy. The kind of heavy that doesn't come from guilt right away, but from knowing that something has shifted and can't shift back. I slipped out of bed quietly, careful not to wake him. My feet were cold against the wooden floor. I moved through the house in silence, trying to ignore the echo of last night in my body, in my chest, on my skin. I made coffee, sat at the kitchen table, let it go cold. This wasn't a love story. It wasn't a mistake, either. It was something in between, something more dangerous than either. Jesse came in sometime later, barefoot and rubbing sleep from his eyes. He wore the same t-shirt, his hair a little messy. He didn't look at me right away. Just grabbed a mug and poured himself coffee like we were any two people, any morning. Neither of us said anything for a long time. I should head out in a bit, he said finally, sitting across from me. I nodded. Yeah, that's probably a good idea. He looked up at me. I'm not sorry. I met his eyes. I didn't think you would be. You are, though. I didn't answer. Jesse leaned back, his expression unreadable. You know, last night wasn't about sex. It never really was. I know. I think you needed someone to see you. That's all. I did. And maybe that's enough. I swallowed hard. Maybe. He gave me a small smile, one that was full of understanding and a little bit of sadness. You don't have to hate yourself for it. Whatever it was, you're still human. I looked away. Tell that to Nina. You didn't cheat on her, he said. Not in the way you think. I almost laughed. No? Then what was it? He took a sip of his coffee. It was a moment, one that's over now. I wanted to believe that moments could just end, that they didn't leave cracks behind, that you could touch someone's soul and then just walk away without carrying the shape of them forever. After Jesse packed his things, I walked him to the door. The sky was clear and blue, the kind of morning that tries too hard to look innocent. He turned to me before stepping outside. Take care of yourself, Aaron. You too. He hesitated. Then he leaned in and kissed my cheek, soft, like goodbye and thank you in the same breath. And then he left. No drama, no promises, just the click of the door and silence behind it. Later that day, Nina came home. I was standing in the hallway when she walked in, suitcase in one hand, coat draped over her arm. She smiled faintly, tired. Hey! Hey, I said. She leaned in and kissed my cheek, the same spot Jessie had. I felt it burn under her lips. How was your mom? I asked, walking beside her toward the kitchen. She's okay. Same as always. Lonely, but stubborn about it. I nodded. The words felt familiar. She set down her bag and opened the fridge. Jessie stayed over, right? Yeah, just 2 nights. Good kid, she said. Grew up a lot. Yeah, I echoed. He did. She didn't notice anything. Or maybe she did and chose not to ask. That was our pattern. After all, a shared silence we called marriage. That night, we lay in bed together for the first time in weeks. Not touching, not even close. Just 2 people back to back, with miles of history and distance between them. In the dark, I listened to her breathing. It didn't sync with mine, not like Jesse's had. I closed my eyes and thought about that moment, his hand on my chest, the way he looked at me like I was something whole, something worth wanting, not out of need, but choice. It wasn't love, and it wasn't lust. It was a glimpse of something I didn't know I'd been starving for, and now it was gone. I didn't cry. I didn't whisper his name. I just lay there, still and quiet, carrying the weight of a night that didn't ask for forgiveness, only memory. It wasn't a mistake, but it was a line I could never uncross, and I crossed it willingly.